Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about how my coffee addiction turned me on to this new way of getting in shape. So, I used to be a coffee addict, a bad one. I couldn't sleep, and I'd tried everything to try to sleep better. I'd been kind of a natural insomniac my entire life. And I thought, oh, maybe it's because I drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day. So, let me explain a little bit about how coffee and my fitness are interrelated. I would wake up every morning and go to the Red Line and stop at a Dunkin' Donuts and drink a huge coffee and a donut before I went downtown to work. On the way into my office downtown, right near the Sears Tower, I worked in an office where there's a Starbucks in the basement. I walked through it every time I would go in to use the elevator. So oftentimes I would stop and have a little coffee there after I got off the Red Line, like a true addict. I would get up to work, have my morning meetings, and then right after my morning meetings, I would usually go on a walk with somebody and go get even more coffee. So by, I don't know, 10:30 or 11, I had had 3 cups of coffee. They weren't huge cups. That first one was big, but I'd always have a small coffee with me. And then throughout the rest of the day, I like to take walking meetings, and I would always walk to get, yet again, more coffee. So this was a problem, and I slowly but surely started to realize that I had programmed myself, or I'd been programmed to be a complete addict to coffee, and I needed to stop. The thing is that when I tried to stop, it was a real issue. I had really bad headaches. I would experience anxiety when I walked past the Dunkin' Donuts or the Starbucks or any of the other coffee shops that I used to frequent all the time. So I did what any addict would do and just say, hey, I'm a complete addict and I really need to stop doing this. But it was that realization that I'd been programmed that kind of turned my brain on to thinking about, quitting coffee, sleeping, so I could get into shape differently than I had before. Because like you, I've tried diets and all sorts of stuff in the past, and nothing has quite worked like this. So that's the story of my coffee addiction. But next, let me talk to you a little bit about this programming and how that kind of transformed into the stuff that I'm sharing with you all now. So yeah, I realized I was programmed by myself and other people, and I felt hopeless and kind of stuck with this whole coffee thing. It was not easy to quit. But I did realize that since I worked with computers all day and building software, that I could look at this as a programming problem. And when you're programming a computer, you speak to it in a language. It stores the information in little ones and zeros. And then you can make the computer do stuff you want. You can give it features. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the gist of how it works. So think about when your mail is, your email client is sorting through and filtering out spam, or when you get a notification on your phone. These are all programs, and I realized that I'd been programmed the exact same way. When there was a time, a long time ago, where I didn't drink coffee at all, and I went about my day just fine with plenty of energy, no headaches, and no anxiety because I wasn't drinking I wasn't drinking coffee. So then I realized that maybe if I was programmed, I could debug my brain and deprogram myself, and then I wouldn't be addicted to coffee anymore. This seemed like a simple enough concept on the surface, but I needed to think through it a little more. So let me tell you a little bit about the difference between human versus computer programming. Computers just have a few lines of code, and you can test it to see if it works. It's an instant response. When you program a computer, you put something in, you can test it and get feedback immediately. You have specific languages like JavaScript or Python or Cobalt to program a computer. And computers don't lie to themselves about their programming. When you program a computer to filter messages, filter spam messages out of your mail, it doesn't sit there and say to itself, oh, but I really need those spam messages. I really want those spam messages. You just program it to filter spam messages, and bam, it's done. It executes. Humans are very different, though. There's some similarities, but it's not quite the same. First, we don't have a simple language that you can just go read a book on to program your brain at all. So you can't just go learn JavaScript for the human brain like you can with computers. And humans resist programming when they know about it. So if any of you all have ever tried a diet, you're essentially withdrawing inputs that you're putting into your body. You usually eat sugar after lunch or dinner. Now you don't, and that's a problem. We have a resistance to this because we're always trying to maintain a homeostasis no matter where we're at. We'll talk a little bit about what it means with our pattern of trying to maintain homeostasis later. But we are resistant to programming, and that resistance has different amplitudes depending on what it is that you're trying to program or unprogram. And kind of the scariest part about humans is we're largely unaware of the programming that we get. You know, somehow I became a coffee addict. It's not like anybody was coming in to twist my arm to turn me into a coffee addict. But slowly but surely over time, through commercials and through going into offices where everyone else is just drinking coffee, the way we live life here in the United States is adults drink coffee in the morning, at least in the morning. But I'm not conscious. I was never consciously aware that I was being programmed to become addicted to coffee, but slowly but surely over the course of years and years and years, I was drinking 4 or 5 cups of coffee and I couldn't sleep anymore, which was a problem. So all this led me kind of to a realization that felt pretty good. It let me realize that I could be in control of this thing and succeed where I'd failed before with diets and exercise and quitting all sorts of bad habits, as you probably have all tried and failed in the past. But I did have to admit to myself that I am programmed, and I'm aware of my programming now, and that somehow, some way, I can deprogram myself. People have quit using coffee or reduced their coffee use. People have quit using heroin and crack, So if it is, you are capable of deprogramming yourself. And the most important thing was that I finally felt like I was in control, even if it doesn't seem like it at times. It took me several attempts to quit drinking coffee there initially, but I eventually got through it using some of these tools I'm about to show you. But I really needed to answer some more questions. As soon as I started thinking of fitness in this way, it brought up a bunch of questions I had. So let's cover a few of those questions. First of all, if I am programmed, I started thinking of what type of language I would need to deprogram myself from coffee specifically. If humans get programmed to engage in certain behaviors, what's the programming language that we speak in? The next one was my total capacity. It's not like coffee was the only thing that I wanted to change. My real goal was to get fit, whatever that meant. And that meant that I didn't know if I could try to quit coffee and lose weight, stop drinking sodas, stop a social media addiction, and to start running, to start riding my bike. All of these things at once. I really wanted to try to understand, should I try all of these things at the same time, or do I have the capacity for just one or just a few of these things? Also, coffee, like I said, is just one of a million things that I wanted to change, but was having a hard time changing. And I didn't really have a good way of deciding on, well, where should I start? Is coffee really the most important thing I should do? Or is there some other avenue I should take as a road to fitness? And what's harder to deprogram, coffee addiction or laziness about running? What's the actual effort it would take to do this? Could I quit coffee in a week but not pick up a habit of running or lifting weights for months? I've always heard that old adage that a habit takes 21 days, but I think that's bullshit, because I've tried it in the past and I held habits for more than 21 days and I've fallen off of those habits before. So that didn't seem legit to me. So I wanted to get fit, but the big problem is I didn't really know what that meant. I had no definition of fitness that I could work off of, so it was hard to get me to a point where I could know where I was aiming or what I was shooting for. And that was something that I needed to change. So these are all the types of questions that I needed to ask. So for this session, the key realizations that I had, and I hope you have, is that you are programmable. You have been programmed either with your knowing or unknowingly. And these patterns are stored in your brain like code. I'm sure it's more complicated than that if you talk to a neuroscientist, but as a simple mental model, I just like to think of myself as I've been programmed, that's stored in my brain, and now I have these behavior patterns that are a part of me. You are in control of these, even if it doesn't seem like it right now. I'm sure some of you are struggling with all sorts of addictions, and I've certainly quit stuff a lot harder than coffee, but ultimately you are in control. Whether it takes you one attempt to try to quit something or 100, if you keep trying, you're going to keep improving over time. So the message is that you can become an intentional programmer of your fitness and really kind of your life, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Diet and exercise are only a small part of this process, and I hope that you can see from some of these questions that I've raised that this process that I'm going to walk you through is going to be very different than just giving you a list of foods to eat and a program of weights you should lift. But that is all for today. Again, go check this stuff out at philosophyforfitness.com. That's where I'm posting all of the stuff that you'll need to work through this process. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me either here on YouTube, or you can reach me on my Substack. Thanks and have a good day.